is a motion on capital investment in the fishing industry. Clerk, please read the motion.
That this Assembly recognises the need to safeguard and build on the success of Northern Ireland's fishing industry. Notes with concern the impact of rising input costs for many local fishermen. Supports the delivery of adequate and ongoing practical and financial support to those affected. Further notes the importance of ensuring the local fishing industry is in a position to take advantage of new fishing opportunities and contribute to green growth, including through investment in modernising its vessels and gear. Urges the UK Government to ensure its policies, in respect of the allocation of fishing quotas and access to labour, reflect the particular needs of the fishing industry in Northern Ireland, and calls on the Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs to reiterate his department's commitment to providing capital funding to redevelop Northern Ireland's harbour infrastructure at Kilkeel, Ardglass and Portavogie.
Thank you. I call Michelle McElveen to move the motion. Thank you. The Business Committee has agreed to allow up to 1 hour 30 minutes for this debate. The proposer of the motion will have 10 minutes to propose and 10 minutes to wind. As an amendment has been selected and is published in the marshal list, the Business Committee has agreed that 15 minutes will be added to the total time for the debate. Please open the debate on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The commercial fishing industry is hugely important to the Northern Ireland economy. DAERA has identified that the industry supports nearly 400 businesses and around 1,850 full-time equivalent jobs, generating £169 million in turnover. It's fundamental to the communities of Portavogie in my own constituency, Kilkeel and Ardglass. From the outset, I would like to pay tribute to the fishermen who bravely set out in the oldest fishing fleet in Europe to land their catch in a grossly underfunded harbour infrastructure. Despite the challenges faced, the local fishing industry has proven to be incredibly resilient, but it has huge potential to grow and expand. This is vital for its sustainability and for attracting future generations into the industry. The Minister visited Portavogie Harbour in advance of this debate, and he will have seen how the harbour estate at Portavogie, along with the other two commercial harbours, constrains operational capacity. As a result, Northern Ireland lags behind other regions. The Fishing and Seafood Development Programme, commissioned in 2019, laid out a direction of travel for significant public investment in harbour infrastructure, including plans to allocate £73 million for a new harbour Irish Sea marine hub at Kilkeel, £20 million for deepening the approach channel at Ardglass, and £5 million to develop the existing harbour and abandoned buildings in Portavogie. One of the final instructions by your immediate predecessor, my colleague Edwin Poots, was to progress the technical and environmental studies for both Ardglass and Kilkeel. However, even this initial preparatory work has been beset by delay due to competing pressures on the public purse. Investments such as these are essential, not simply aspirational. It's vital that communities and industry representatives are provided with a clear indication from the Minister on the current state of these plans and when work will be undertaken to complete the relevant technical studies. Subject to those studies having favourable outcomes, can we expect the Minister to commit to full implementation of the FSDP's recommendations? Conversations need to begin around the necessary finance for the construction phase of these programmes immediately. Given the recognition of the need for investment by the Minister after last week's visit, can he confirm to the Chamber that he has raised this with the Finance Minister, and if not, will he commit to doing so? As the Minister will be aware, there was a provisional commencement date of spring 2026. Can he advise the Chamber if that start date is still achievable, and if not, has a revised timetable been developed? The Minister likes to promote his environmental credentials, and I would say that continued delay in pressing forward with this major investment will only hamper efforts in transitioning to more efficient and safer fishing vessels and technology with a decreased carbon footprint. Our current harbours cannot facilitate more modern vessels which are larger, deeper and wider than the existing fleet. Our fish producers and processors require greater capacity to adapt and evolve to tap into fresh opportunities and to new markets. Looking specifically at our largest fishing harbour in Kilkeel, it's well recognised that having a new economic and marine activity centre would bring far-reaching and lasting social and economic benefits. This hub would facilitate aquaculture, leisure boating, boat repair and decommissioning, and with a deeper approach channel, allow larger vessels to land. Now, while the Minister in his press release looked forward to engaging with the Northern Ireland fishing industry to explore options for fleet modernisation, sustainability and achieving net zero targets, there are even more pressing concerns than these. While those capital plans are incredibly important for the industry's medium to long-term viability, immediate and medium-term grant support is critical to ensure that fishing opportunities and operations are adequately supported. The industry is rolling towards potential crisis, and I would urge the Minister to act. The first area is in relation to labour shortages and the proposed increase to the skilled worker visa salary threshold. The catching sector is already struggling to address labour shortages, particularly among UK residents, and also faces difficulty in the processing sector. As a result, the seafood sector is massively reliant on non-UK labour in both the catching and processing sectors. 82% of the Nefrops fleet rely on non-UK labour compared to 75% of the static gear fleet and 52% of the demersal beam trawl fleet. The new salary threshold would have a devastating impact on those fleets, particularly the Nefrops fleet, which is estimated could result in operating losses of between £41,500 and £83,500, inevitably leading to business closures and increased prices for the consumer. The price paid to Nefrop vessel operators would need to increase 33%. The price that processors would charge retailers could increase 14.5%, and the price to food service sector buyers would need to increase by 15.6%. The quayside price for whitefish would need to increase by 9%. All this would impact on international competitiveness. It's estimated that the change in the salary threshold would see a reduction in operating and net profit margins of 12 percentage points across the UK processing industry, meaning that the corresponding net profit margin would be too low to provide an acceptable return, driving processing businesses away. This, of course, is in addition to other pressures, including energy price rises, minimum wage increases, and raw material price increases. While our fishermen are skilled, these crews do not live in the UK permanently. They don't want to bring their families, and they don't want accommodation on shore. They want to come to work, then return home to their families until the next fishing season. Attempting to shoehorn them into an expensive skilled visa system presents an unachievable financial burden for the fishing vessel and, in a number of cases, an unachievable requirement to pass a written English exam for the fishermen. Disappointingly, the Migration Advisory Committee has not recommended trawlermen be placed on the immigration salary list. Will the Minister seek to meet with the Home Office to express these concerns and show his support for the fishing industry by advocating an immigration system for fishing crews modelled on the seasonal worker visa? Over and above these cost pressures, there is serious concern about the fishing industry in Northern Ireland, about the reduction in the fishing grounds by ineffective marine protection areas, offshore construction, energy constructions, which have been seen to eradicate stocks of prawns and other crustaceans, and the proposed closing of huge swathes of waters by the Manx government. The shrinking and closing of grounds will result in the overfishing of open territories and the ultimate decimation of our industry as the catch deteriorates. This would not be the case if the current waters were kept open, as they have been sustainably fished for over 70 years. The actions by the Manx government has purportedly to protect carbon sequestration on mud banks, but there is considerable doubt in the industry that these actions may be more related to the Isle of Man's plans to develop its own industry. And I would urge the Minister to urgently engage with DEFRA and the Isle of Man Minister to develop a sensible and proportionate solution that protects Northern Ireland's interests while allowing the Isle of Man to develop its own industry. The next challenge are the Irish Republic's proposals to ban bottom trawling in their 0 to 6 mile zone, again claimed to be in the name of environmentalism, but fishermen are responsible environmentalists. It's in their interest to fish sustainably, and the exclusion of bottom trawlers will disproportionately impact our fishing industry. The industry is crying out for this Minister to advocate on their behalf to challenge these blanket bans. In conclusion, the industry needs the Maritime and Fisheries Fund reopened to allow it to innovate, grow and move towards net zero. It needs measures to address the labour shortage and an immigration system for fishing crews modelled on the seasonal worker visa. It needs the fulfilment of FSDP's harbours recommendations, the moving forward of the technical and environmental studies and the securing of the necessary finance. It needs immediate and medium-term grant support. It needs future policies and schemes of support co-designed with the industry. It needs a lasting solution that respects the status of Northern Ireland vessels fishing in UK waters. This will be key to providing the industry with the confidence, certainty and competitiveness to fulfil their potential and maximise the benefits of access to markets. But most of all, Mr Speaker, the industry needs this Minister and this Department to fight for it and have its best interests at heart as it meets the challenges which I've outlined. Thank you.
Thank you. I call Colin McGrath to move the amendment. You will have 10 minutes to propose and 5 minutes to wind. All other speakers will have 5 minutes. Please open the debate on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I suppose getting this opportunity to have a conversation about the infrastructure and capital investment around our ports is exceptionally important, because there hasn't been a substantial investment in them in such a long period of time, and also this programme that we're talking about now has been kicking about for quite a number of years, and there's a lot of uncertainty amongst the sector as they try to get the information about where we are. But before speaking to the amendment, I want to extend, Mr Speaker, to you the appreciation of many in the sector because of the work that you did previously as an Agriculture Minister and Fisheries Minister. They felt that you understood the sector and tried to progress that, and we hope that we can build on that now going forward. As you will know, Mr Speaker, the importance of the Fisheries and Seafood Development Report. There are many that actually don't. They don't realise just how big and how important a sector this is, and how we have to do what we can to ensure investment, harbour development and job sustainability. From the report that was published, it identified that development could take place in Kilkeel, in Ardglass and Portavogie, and that is referenced to us today. And we're talking about a multi-million pound development for those ports. We know the important and valuable contribution that our fishing industry makes to our local and wider community. For example, in 2021 alone, the Northern Ireland fleet landed some 46 kilotons of fish, which was worth £52 million. That's around about 6% of the total UK value. So this is a very important and large sector. And delivery of this programme could actually see that being enhanced, could see that being developed, could see more jobs being delivered into those fishing ports, and then the spin-offs that come into the communities if you've got a thriving port. There are many other industries that will develop as a result.
On that point, would the member give way?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks very much for the member giving way, and I appreciate the motion that's before us here today, but the motion does refer to Northern Ireland's fishing industry. It will be a useful point or a useful marker, and I'm sure the Minister is very well aware of it, that Lough Neagh also has a significant fishing industry which will require support, and also indeed some recognition of the fact that over this last year in particular, the worst manifestations of the algae bloom has indeed had an effect with the zebra mussels and on the fishing industry itself. So I'd ask that the Minister and indeed the proposer of this motion also take cognizance of that fact too. Thank you, and thank the member for giving way.
Yes, thank you. Of course, highlighting the fact that this does extend beyond the three ports in terms of the fishing industry. There are many inland fishery opportunities that are available and are facing their own crises, and it's important that we recognise that today as well. But, Mr Speaker, the Fishery and Seafood Development Programme has twice fallen victim to political failure. The first failure is the fact that these institutions have been collapsed for 5 of the last 7 years. And that really speaks to that uncertainty that I had mentioned there amongst the sector. It feels for them like it's been stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. Will this money come? How much will this money be? Who is it that's going to deliver it? And just whenever they feel like they're getting close to getting some answers, one or other of the parties here collapse the institutions, and then we go into deep freeze for a couple of years. So I think that is something that's worth noting, and stability in that these institutions will actually allow stability and delivery of programmes such as this, which will help our communities. The second failure, of course, that continues to linger over this place is that of Brexit. And Brexit has had a serious impact, and actually the fishing industry is a great example, I think, of where Brexit went wrong. They were promised that there was going to be some sort of panacea for them, that their future was going to be golden because Brexit would help them to take back control. And of course, that hasn't happened. In fact, there's been a downturn in some of the capacity within fishing as a result of Brexit. The uncertainty that Brexit has brought into all industries has had a massive impact as well. I genuinely mean this, and I don't mean it in a manner to shame people. But you have to be able to draw a connection that if you went out into fishing communities and asked them to vote for Brexit, and then Brexit actually had a massive impact on their ability to do their job, and they're now suffering, and then they look to these institutions to try and get some support, and then these institutions are collapsed. It has just been, for people in the fishing industry, it has been blow after blow after blow. So I hope that through this programme, and that we will hear from the Minister, that there will be certainty going forward, that there will be speed in going forward with these programmes, so that the fishing communities and those that have their businesses within it are able to progress their work. We've also referenced the fact that, and our amendment speaks to the fishing processing sector. And there are difficulties there because the fishing processing sector has not been added to that Home Office list of seasonal workers, which means that in order to attract staff into the processing sector, they have to try and navigate the new immigration laws. And again, just take new immigration laws. Why do we have new immigration laws? Because of Brexit. So Brexit resulted in new immigration laws, and those immigration laws are punishing our fishing processing sector. And I think what we need to do is we need to try, and I hope that the Minister will speak to this in his remarks later, that we have to try our best to impress upon the Home Office that there is seasonality to the fish processing sector. Because all fish processing, they don't go out and fish 365 days a year right across all of the various fish that are available. They pick specific elements of that market and then work with it. And there will be seasonality towards the sector that they choose. So I think there is an argument that can be made to the Home Office to say that the fish processing sector is indeed a seasonal task, and that it should be added to that list so that those immigration exemptions can be put in place and they can draw down the staff. Because for some in the fish processing sector, this is going to be the difference between surviving or not. And as has been highlighted already at the start, we have a thriving sector. We want to support the sector. We want to try and encourage and grow the sector. But fishing processors cannot do that if they've got one hand tied behind their back. So I hope that the Minister will accept the amendment to the motion, that he will be able to take that work, have direct interaction with the Home Office and Home Office officials to see if we can get fishing processors added to that list of seasonal workers. So in terms of the motion, because it talks about the development of the fishing infrastructure and sites, we will support that. And as I say, I hope that the amendment, which will help to see the staffing for the fish processing, will also be accepted today as well. Thank you.
And I call Cathy Mason, and is this Miss Mason's maiden speech? No? I thought it was. Okay. Go ahead, Miss Mason.
I'm pleased to be able to speak on this motion and amendment today. As an all-island nation, our fishing industry plays not just a vital economic role here, but an important cultural and historical one as well. Speaking with our local fishermen in Ardglass, it is clear that fishing is much, much more than a job. It's a way of life, an identity, and for many, the continuation of many long and proud family traditions. Irish seafood is renowned for its quality and is both a significant driver of tourism here and a key export around the world, being popular right across Europe and as far away as China. It is not just a moral imperative, but an economic necessity that we protect and support and promote our fisheries in South Down and across Ireland as best as we can. Unfortunately, our fishing industry is still struggling to recover from the double blows of Brexit and COVID, both of which have had a profound effect on the livelihoods of our fishermen and our coastal and island communities. I commend those behind the motion for acknowledging the strain rising costs are putting on the industry and echo their call for long-needed harbour infrastructural improvements at Ardglass, Kilkeel and Portavogie to ensure long-term sustainability and a bright future for our fishing industry and heritage. Something that is evident from our fishermen in Ardglass as they speak with passion about their struggles with skilled labour is that in addition to financial and material support, greater recognition of fishing as a skilled profession is a must, and a programme of training and learning for local fishing apprenticeships that can help future-proof the local industry is necessary. I was also pleased to see the industry's potential for green growth singled out for mention. As we transition to net zero emissions and place a greater emphasis on conservation and biodiversity, our fishermen will have a key role to play in protecting our waters. Just as with the agriculture and environment, our fishing industry and our marine ecosystem are not adversarial. They are complementary, relying on one another. There is a reasonable balance to be found between marine conservation and maintaining a sustainable fishing resource. One of the most crucial aspects of our fishing industry is the all-Ireland dimension. Our waters and marine life, just like our flora and fauna, do not abide by political boundaries. In order for our fishing industry to thrive and thrive sustainably, we must work as closely as possible with all government departments, as well as fishing bodies and communities in the rest of Ireland, to maintain and strengthen ties. No, thanks. Such as reciprocal rights and access to waters. Expediting of the permit process, equal access to piers, harbours and ports for fishermen that are resident on this island, and to work towards the harmonisation of fishery, licensing and regulation on the island. We must also present a united front in our efforts to have environmentally and economically destructive super trawlers banned from Irish waters, and to implement strict monitoring of factory trawlers to eliminate destructive overfishing practices and extremely damaging discards of small and juvenile fishing species. Irish waters are the envy of Europe. If we work together to support local fishermen and coastal communities, promote sustainable fishing practice and develop our infrastructure, our fishing industry and our local harbours can be as well. So I'm happy to support the motion and the amendment.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And can I say, Mr. Speaker, the importance of our fishing industry has been clearly illustrated by the previous speakers, and I'd like to thank the proposers of the motion and also the amendment for bringing this matter to the Assembly today. The Northern Ireland fishing industry has been a vital contributor to the country's economy, providing employment opportunity and also sustaining local communities. However, the industry is continuing to face significant challenges which are causing concerns among the local fishermen and their families, such as rising input costs and fishing quota strains. Those of us, Mr. Speaker, who have engaged with the sector over the years will have been briefed on this to some extent and will be well aware of those challenges, so it is all the more important that we address them today. There is no doubt that the fishing industry needs investment in modernising its vessels and gear, not just to improve efficiency and safety, but also, very importantly, to contribute to green growth. The new Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, my colleague Andrew Muir, recently met with the sector, including the Northern Ireland Fishing Harbour Authority and the Northern Ireland Fishermen's Federation, to discuss these issues and the necessary steps for meaningful action. In particular, Mr. Speaker, during his visit to Portavogie Harbour, the Minister highlighted the significant opportunities for decarbonisation and his intention to pursue these issues, and this is welcome news. Speaker, decarbonising the sector is vital if we are to achieve our climate action targets, particularly the net zero target as laid out in the Climate Change Act and laid out, of course, by this Assembly. In order to make this work, our fishing industry must take an ecosystem-based approach whereby climate-friendly fishing is championed across the region. This is crucial for ocean conservation and health. Thriving biodiversity is needed for a productive and healthy marine environment, which is ultimately vital for good stock management, and therefore this helps both the marine light and also the fishing industry itself flourish. Furthermore, it is essential to cooperate with other jurisdictions, including North-South as well as East-West bodies, to ensure a coordinated approach in these matters. We must remember that when it comes down to it, our waterways and marine life do not recognise borders and boundaries, so our responses must reflect this. Before I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I wish to stress that it would be advantageous for the industry to witness the implementation of the future marine and fisheries support strategy. The strategy is expected to facilitate the growth of green practices and decarbonisation in the sector. The consultation on this strategy was conducted in late 2022, early 2023, and proposed a 5-year financial support plan for the fishing industry. However, the delivery of the strategy is still pending, and of course it requires adequate and additional funding. Overall, it is essential to safeguard and build on the success of the Northern Ireland fishing industry. It is also imperative that we invest in sustainable and economically viable fisheries, while also taking steps to protect the marine environment on which it depends. I have focused, Mr. Speaker, mainly on environmental and marine matters this morning. Alliance colleagues will speak soon in the debate on other matters, including the economy, the importance to local communities and access to seasonal workers. In the meantime, I'm happy to express our support for both the motion and the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I welcome the debate and the discussion over the fishing industry. While obviously it is limited to the areas that can actually land fish and that they have to be beside the sea. I do appreciate Mr Malone's comments about Loch Ness and, well, I don't know where he spelt out the eel fishing sector within that, but I think that's a long way from the issue that we're discussing here today around investment in the harbours of Kilkeel and Ardglass and Portavogie. However, he does make a good point. That's for another day, I think, and for the debate for another day. The fishing industry has an annual turnover, I noticed, in 2021 of £135 million and supports 1,550 jobs. That is not to be taken lightly, I do have to say, in today's society. It is very important and strategic to those particular areas, and I have visited the harbours in the 3 areas on a regular basis, maybe not so much the last couple of years, but to say that they need investment is probably an understatement. And I know, Mr. Speaker, when you were Minister, you recognised that we can't have an industry of this size without some central support, because the industry puts huge amounts of investment into it themselves, and it is an industry that has been raked with uncertainty for generations almost, and certainly over the last number of decades they've had uncertainty embedded within the industry. Firstly, that I recall, around the EU quotas, and that caused great difficulty for the fishing industry, because every year they had to go and look for their quotas at the European Union, because they weren't sure what quotas they were actually going to get, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure you remember that from your times as well. Then there was uncertainty around what waters they could fish in, and I know it caused a lot of frustration among fishermen as to the natural waters that they thought that the Northern Ireland fishing industry should have been able to fish in, and sometimes they weren't allowed to, and that caused a great deal of frustration. Also, we had the uncertainty then around Brexit, the Northern Ireland Protocol, and the Windsor Framework now. So it is an industry that keeps having these uncertainties, and they can't seem to have a stable position around them, and that causes a huge amount of difficulty. So we cannot expect an industry of this economic importance to Northern Ireland just to survive without that central support. And I do appreciate that there was a commitment to support investment in those harbours and to bring them up to a level of sustainability for that industry. So it will be good to hear from the Minister as to whether that will continue, that commitment to investment will continue, or whether they have to start afresh. But I certainly support that fishing industry. I want to see it progress. And it is an industry that we have a uniqueness because of our location here, and those three great locations that can provide support for the fishing industry, but also for huge employment. I did hear it mentioned the difficulties that there are around workers, particularly workers that come into Northern Ireland from other countries. I'm hoping that can be managed and progressed, and look forward to what the Minister has to say on that, and what sort of discussions he's had with the Home Office so far about ensuring they can have jobs here in Northern Ireland. So I support, and the Ulster Unionist Party, Mr. Speaker, support the motion and the amendment. Thank you.
And I welcome the motion and the amendment and the opportunity to speak to them, because as a representative, representing Southdown, I've had the pleasure of meeting and listening to many of our local fishermen from right across the constituency, and the passion and dedication that they show proves, as many have said, that fishing is more than just a job, and our fishing industry is a key part of our society. Local harbours in Kilkeel and Ardglass are the heartbeat of our communities and economic engines for Southdown, but they have faced huge challenges over the last number of years. As many other speakers have said, they have tackled the worst effects of Brexit, they've grappled with the COVID pandemic, and also grappled with workforce pressures. I, along with my colleagues Chris Hazard and Cathy Mason and other constituency colleagues, have visited Kilkeel and Ardglass harbours many times. We have spoken to the local fishing crews, and we do support the need for the redevelopment of Kilkeel Harbour, along with that of Ardglass and Portavogie. But, Mr. Speaker, there will be no point ploughing money into the development of Kilkeel Harbour or anywhere else if we cannot get the crews to work out of them. With limited crew availability and a shortage of new members, the industry is facing huge labour difficulties. Harsh measures facing foreign nationals and the 12-mile offshore requirement is proving virtually impossible for local fleets to deal with. We know that many are forced now to go through the sponsorship route, and this route requires applicants to be successful on a stringent language exam, an exam that many of our migrant workers fail repeatedly. These barriers only add more layers to what appears to be an already bleak picture for our local fishing industry. And this is not just an issue for our local fishing crews, it is also an issue for the Scottish industry, which we know has been impacted hugely by all of these issues as well. And what we need to see is an all-island approach to help the industry thrive, and the recognition for fishing as a skilled profession, and a programme of training for our local fishing apprentices that can help recruit and future-proof the industry right across our island. I also believe that we need to look at diversification, and there are a few areas that are presently prohibited to commercial fishing, but yet hold millions in potential revenue. Areas of fisheries such as aquaculture or algaculture, and these are areas that should be promoted and explored as a matter of urgency to give alternatives to a mortally wounded fishing industry. We have spoken in this chamber over the last number of days and weeks about apprenticeships, and fishing is in dire need of a fresh approach in terms of encouraging our young people to take up the trade. Fishing in areas like Kilkeel is very often a family business with generations following each other into the industry, but this is simply not happening anymore. We need to see cross-departmental working with the Department for Economy to encourage local further and higher education colleges to provide courses for our young people so we can reinvigorate and repopulate the industry. So, Mr. Speaker, I commend the motion, and we will be supporting the amendment as well, and we welcome the calls from around the chamber for continued investment into our local harbours in Kilkeel, Ardglass and Portavogie. Investment and the regeneration of our harbours and fishing industry is vital to develop, protect and sustain our coastal and rural communities in Southdown. It will help modernise and build more efficient fishing operations that will grow into the future. So I'm urging the Minister to prioritise the investment for Kilkeel, Ardglass and Portavogie harbours and deliver the funding needed to upgrade our local harbours in Southdown.
Speaker, This is an important debate for those in the fishing industry in Northern Ireland, and I welcome the opportunities to make my contributions on the matter in the House today. The fishing industry in Northern Ireland is a resilient sector, and one only has to look at the seas, what our fishermen experience out on our high seas and many unsettled weather is worthy of our utmost respect, given the many dangers they face when carrying out their work. Indeed, I suspect, as consumers, many of us who enjoy a fish supper from our local chippy or sit down to a fish dish either at home or in a restaurant may not give much thought to how the fish ended up in the wrapper and the plate. This deserves consideration given the perils our fishermen face and also the significant costs and risks they must absorb before making any reasonable profit for their efforts. In broadest possible terms, our fishermen deserve support, and the industry deserves a strategy backed and funded by our devolved Assembly in Westminster. They will meet the key requests set out within this motion. Mention has been made of the Fishing and Seafood Development Programme, first commissioned in 2019. This was an important piece of work as it laid out a course for much needed public investment in Northern Ireland's harbour infrastructure. This included a plan for investment in Kilkeel to the tune of 73 million for the new harbour, an Irish fishing marine hub. It also included a proposed 20 million investment to improve access at Ardglass and 5 million investment at Portavogie. My own party was successful in securing permission for an outline business case to progress the vital technical and environmental studies that would have paved the way to moving the project forward. However, it is regrettable that even this preparatory work has been delayed due to the pressures in public finances. It is easy to see why our industry is frustrated by this lack of progress when so much is at stake for them. It is vital that the work around the important project is stepped up and progressed at speed. I would ask the dear Minister for an urgent update on this matter and for some clarity on the timelines and levels of funding that will be made available under this programme of work. The proposal for 73 million spent at Kilkeel to create a new harbour, and also the fact that this would see it become an Irish sea marine hub is very exciting and very much needed, and will undoubtedly be a game changer in the future for fishing, obviously, but also important for tourism. Agriculture is an important capacity for both repair and decommissioning. Given the executive has been reformed and there is a dear minister in place, there is a clear need now for conversations around the financing of the harbours project, and also a clear direction on the consultations and technical studies. There was an indication in September 2026 was the start date. As that is not very far away in the calendar, it's certainly vital the Minister gets to grips with his timeframes and sets out clearly the direction for the industry around the project. The fishing industry, of course, is an important part of the economy in the local coastal areas in which they are based. And the estimates show that the industry has an annual turnover of approximately 135 million and supports around 1,500 jobs. With this firmly in mind, and taking account of the proposals already in the existence to move the industry forward, then it is within reason to state that this outlook could easily be improved upon. To see progress to the Fishing and Seafood Development Programme would be so good and positive in the local communities who have a direct connection economically to the fishing industry. The industry does not want to stand still and should be supported to move forward. The motion refers to green growth, and it is clear that the progress around green growth is directly related to the necessary improvements in our harbours,
Remarks are closed.
as I've outlined earlier. The issue of creating a support for pathway for new fishing opportunities goes hand in hand, and we look forward to that happening.
I call Kelly Armstrong.
Mr. Speaker, probably unlike a lot of people in this House, or maybe I'm in the wrong place to say that, but I live 3 miles from Portavogie Harbour. I grew up, my summers were spent in Isabel Piper's prawn factory peeling prawns. The fishing industry is local to my heart, it's local to the Ards Peninsula, and to be honest, apart from tourism, fishing is the key industry on the Ards Peninsula. We lose a lot of construction workers who've disappeared off around the world, but our fishing industry comes back in and the boats come back in every day. If it wasn't for our fishing industry, we wouldn't have the quays in Portavogie, we wouldn't have Bestie's Cafe, and we wouldn't have many of the other local businesses. As the previous speaker mentioned, 1,500 jobs come out of the farm or the fishing industry, and many of those are within my constituency of Strangford. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Minister for prioritising the fishing industry in his first few weeks as Minister. I greatly appreciate his recent visits with members of the Northern Ireland Fishing Harbour Authority and local fishers and local fishermen during his visit to Portavogie Harbour and his meeting with the Northern Ireland Fishermen's Federation. During the visit to Portavogie, I'm aware that the Minister congratulated NIFA on securing the offer from the UK Seafood Fund of 75% of the £3.6 million cost of an upgrade of the current slipway facilities at Portavogie, confirming DERA has already provided the financial assistance towards the development costs associated with the UK Seafood Fund application by providing the 25% match funding required to complete the investment by the 31st of March 2025. What I would say is that this investment provides a huge opportunity for Portavogie and enables the potential for future work to be delivered that will complement fishing. For example, in realigning and securing the existing crane rails along the length of the existing slipway, it will ensure the smooth running of a boat cradle that can slip large vessels up to 400 tonnes in weight. What is the complementary options that we have here? Well, at a meeting in Portavogie with a prospective offshore wind farm, representatives of that group explained that the potential for the local fishing fleet was to be able to transport wind turbine blades and other equipment to their proposed site. So having that additional weight of a crane and the lifting of that out makes such a difference to the future potential for the harbour. Mr. Speaker, I listened to the proposer of the motion, my fellow Strangford MLA, Michelle McElveen, discuss the need for capital investment to bring forward larger vehicles. Like the Minister, many in the fishing industry and all of this House, I want to see improvements to the fishing fleet to also meet environmental targets. I note with more than a passing interest in the progressive actions being taken in Iceland, where the Minister for Fisheries is incentivising investment in new and modified boats to run on electric. Tests on an all-electric long-line handling system are providing very interesting and positive findings. Minister, could I ask that you take the opportunity to outline some of the solutions that you aim to bring forward to assist our fishing industry, my local constituents working out of Portavogie, to also move forward with their environmental targets? Sadly, I do believe, Mr. Speaker, that the Minister's job will be made ever more difficult due to the outworkings of Brexit, with access to funds being limited and Northern Ireland's own budget situation. Minister, I'm not going to speak for much longer, but I have what positive words can you provide to this House and for our local fishing industry following this motion of how you will be able to help them in the time ahead? Thank you.
And I thank you for your work within the fishing industry in your previous role as DERA Minister as well. I welcome this motion. The Northern Ireland fishing industry has enjoyed success for generations, and like the previous speaker, I have close experience of this growing up in the mooring fishing town of Kilkeel. I've always appreciated this industry and how the harbour formed the heart of our town. The fishing boats, large and small, with their crews, worked so hard throughout the year, often through the extreme weather and difficult process of navigating professionally through the Kilkeel Pier. It's not just the fishermen, but the entire harbour community that supports the fishing industry and benefits from investment there, including a number of fish factories, fish markets and shops, as well as the local seafood cookery school and successful boat building businesses. Our fishing industry is incredibly important, and following on an agreement with my party colleagues Michelle McElveen and William Irwin, I support this motion to safeguard and build on the success of Northern Ireland's fishing industry. The industry needs our support as they face significant challenges currently. As with so many businesses and homes, the cost of fuel and rising input costs for many of our local fishermen cause great concern. But the biggest concern raised to me week in, week out is that previously mentioned of their workforce. The introduction of the £38,700 salary threshold on workers on skilled worker visas will be devastating for the fishing industry. Even the uncertainty at the moment is taking its toll as fishermen are struggling to get seafarers with the required English qualifications. I've previously asked the DAERA Minister about his plans in relation to this, and his response was how he would be liaising and writing to different bodies, and I urge him to raise this as a matter of urgency, as the fishing industry is critically suffering now, in contact with me daily on this. And whilst decisions are not being taken to safeguard the industry and reflect the particular needs of the fishing sector in Northern Ireland, their ability to access labour, they are suffering. The capital and running costs of fishing boats are high. As mentioned by my colleague Michelle McElveen, the Marine and Fisheries Fund provided for funding a range of things through the fishing industry. These are critical. Fishermen are relying on a lot of these, and this support is available for projects that deliver on sustainable economic growth in the sea fisheries and aquaculture sectors. And the purpose of the scheme is to continue to provide Northern Ireland with a financial support mechanism for the fisheries, inland waters, aquaculture and maritime sectors. And the fund closed in 2023 without reopening. And I urge the Minister to reinstate this fund to support the delivery of adequate and ongoing practical and financial support to those affected who need it. In the past, we saw ambitious plans for significant investment in the Kilkeel outer harbour come and go. This moved through different government departments but never progressed, to great disappointment locally. We need to secure investment. We want to see the local fishing industry in a position to take advantage of new fishing opportunities. And as my colleague Michelle McElveen outlined, Northern Ireland has fallen behind in this area. So I call on the Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs to stand up for the Northern Ireland fishing industry, to reiterate his department's commitment to providing the capital funding to redevelop Northern Ireland's harbour infrastructure across Kilkeel, Ardglass and Portavogie, and to commit to a time frame for the delivery of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the proposers of this motion for bringing it today, and I agree with them that we must recognise the need to safeguard and build our fishing industry in Northern Ireland. As a representative for South Down, home to the two largest fishing fleets at Kilkeel and Ardglass, I know firsthand the challenges facing the industry, as have been clearly outlined by previous speakers. Fishing in coastal communities have a rich and important history and are integral to the wider economy and life in rural communities. We are blessed in Northern Ireland with some of the most beautiful coastline in the world, and in South Down we are doubly blessed to be in close proximity to some of the most productive fishing grounds in Europe. With this, though, comes a great responsibility, as these grounds are also some of the most biologically sensitive in Europe. And at all times, we must balance the demands of the economy and food security with the sustainability and safeguarding of the marine environment. All the fishermen and women I know are proud custodians of the sea, and I have great respect for the highly skilled and hard work they do, often passed down through generations. We must do all we can to ensure the culture and heritage of fishing is protected for future generations also. But hard work alone will not overcome the significant and serious challenges that the fishing industry has faced in recent times. UK government changes to unskilled visa rules, combined with our exit from the European Union, has resulted in labour shortages, and the rising cost of fuel as a result of the war in Ukraine has left many vessels unable to reap any economic benefit that may have come from increased quotas. I welcome the DAERA Minister's commitment during the most recent ministerial question time to write to the UK Government outlining the impact these visa changes are having on the fishing industry in Northern Ireland. And whilst the cost of fuel is beyond the control of this place, I know that the Minister has been a champion for the decarbonisation of our fishing fleet, with Northern Ireland having a comparatively old fleet compared to GB and EU nations. And I welcome his commitment to work with other departments to ensure a just transition towards more environmentally friendly vessels in the future. It was also great to see the Minister prioritising a visit to Portavogie Harbour during his first weeks in office, meeting with NIFPO representatives and other local stakeholders, and I very much look forward to welcoming him to Kilkeel and Ardglass harbours also. The Fishing and Seafood Development Programme represents a huge opportunity for these free harbours, which collectively at present generate an annual turnover of £135 million, support 1,550 jobs, and produce an estimated GVA of £55.5 million per annum for the Northern Irish economy. The capital investment outlined in the Fishing and Seafood Development Programme will significantly boost this economic dividend, with ambitious plans to expand and deepen Kilkeel Harbour, creating an Irish Sea marine hub, offering expertise in vessel repair and offshore services. Growing the capacity of Ardglass Harbour will secure the vital fishing and processing industries there, and investment in Portavogie will help maintain its fishing industry and explore blue economy opportunities, as my colleague Kelly Armstrong has outlined also. Whilst the discussion of this motion has been focused on sea fisheries, and rightly so, I think the member for Mid-Ulster was right in drawing attention to inland fisheries as well. And it would be remiss of me not to reflect on the challenges facing inland fisheries, both commercial and recreational. We are all well aware of the threats facing fishing businesses operating on Lough Neagh, and in my own area, rivers once internationally popular for coarse fishing, such as the River Coyle, are now shadows of what they used to be as a result of decades of ecological neglect and harm. The act of fishing is intrinsically linked to the care and custodianship of our environment. One cannot thrive without the other, and I wish the Minister well as he works in partnership with the fishing industry to maximise its economic potential, realise new opportunities and... Yes, sir.
Just particularly on your point about the coarse fishing, that too is a big booster for Northern Ireland in terms of tourism, the number of people who come here for coarse fishing competitions. So remember, take that point as well.
Absolutely, and I've worked closely with local coarse fisher anglers in my own constituency for a number of years to try and get the Coyle River restocked, recognising that potential tourism draw.
Remember, give way.
Certainly.
If you'd resume your seat when you give way. Thank you.
I apologise for asking the member to give way so quickly again, Mr. Speaker, but he is talking about coarse fishing. Didn't want to get it mixed up with the sea fishing that we are, but would he accept that in Lough Erne quite a number of the salmon have stopped coming up and the eels because of the ESB hydro station in Ballyshannon?
I admit to the member that I'm not overly familiar with the area, but our member on the DERA committee has just advised me that he is aware of that serious issue. I would also point out that the motion as worded I don't think was exclusive in terms of sea fisheries, hence why I raised the matter of inland fisheries. I was also on my final sentence before those two interventions, which of course I welcome. But just to recap, I wish the Minister well as he works in partnership with the fishing industry to maximise its economic potential, realise new opportunities and chart a course for sustainability in fishing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel like a fish out of water here speaking about coastal matters, being a Lagan Valley girl, but nonetheless we will continue on. Oh, that's a good one, Jim. I stand in support of the motion today, and I really welcome the proposers of the motion because this is about much more than the fishing industry. This is about showcasing the best of Northern Ireland, and we've heard from various members across the House about the spin-off benefits in terms of skills and indeed tourism. We need to encourage and enable a truly sustainable industry going forward, and that means in every sense of the word. Sustainable in terms of protecting fish stocks, as my colleagues have alluded to, adapting to climate change, achieving our net zero targets, and offering a fair living wage to those working in the industry and ensuring there are future generations entering this vocation and way of life. I will focus particularly on the sustainable fishing economy and skills. However, from the outset, let me say that without decisive action to protect against the worst of climate change and to adapt to the impact we are already witnessing, the fishing industry is facing dire consequences. Much like the Northern Ireland economy, the fishing industry is made up of micro-enterprises and SMEs, but they are central to our coastal communities. Indeed, they are the beating heart, as many others have alluded to. Indeed, the FSD report in 2021 noted that nearly 400 companies contribute to the fishing, seafood and fishing port sectors here. Therefore, while we often look purely at the economic output and productivity, we need to acknowledge that these industries are indeed a key part of our communities. I commend the Minister for meeting with the Northern Ireland Fishing Harbour Authority, and I know the Department has a range of actions in the pipeline to support the fishing industry. But as with other major policy areas, there is huge scope for cross-departmental working, as others have alluded to. For example, the Department for Economy has responsibility with delivery partners like DFI for the energy strategy. Enabling businesses, including those in processing, to invest in renewables is crucial, and that relies on things like upgrading the grid and business support schemes. DFE, as Ms Ennis has also alluded to, has responsibility for skills development, and I would urge the Economy Minister to work in collaboration with the Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs to give young people the opportunity to have numerous routes into this industry. And I agree with Ms Ennis in terms of the apprenticeship piece, something she knows I'm very passionate about. And indeed, whenever we have these apprenticeships coming along, in some cases it's a job for life for many people. It provides stability, it provides a wage, but it provides them that crucial link to their community where they can be part of their heritage and really feel that they're playing a key role. We also need to enable people currently with jobs in the fishing industry the opportunity to upskill, diversify and specialise, and indeed my colleague Kelly Armstrong has already alluded to that cross-seeding of various transferable skills that we have. A consultation for a 5-year proposal on financial support for fishing industry was carried out in late 2022, and it has wide-ranging proposals, including around training, which would be hugely beneficial to see delivered, but this will require adequate funding. While speaking about the need to support people into the industry, as many members have alluded to, migration also plays a crucial role for our fishing industry, indeed as it does for health and social care and many other areas of our society. However, the current Conservative government are pursuing an extreme ideological policy, one that clearly doesn't have the best interests of Northern Ireland or indeed the wider UK at heart. The increase of the minimum salary, as Ms Forsyth has pointed out, is unworkable in Northern Ireland, as is the shameful proposal not to allow care workers to bring their families here. While this is a reserved matter, we urgently need to have more say in migration policy to ensure it adequately reflects the needs of our own society and economy, and to further protect workers coming to work here. And I know the Minister is writing to the Home Office in regard to this. To close, I would say the fishing industry deserves wide-ranging reports, and I'm heartened to hear the various contributions from across the floor of the House today to speak on that. One of the things we can be really proud of in Northern Ireland is indeed that heritage of food, and the provenance of our seafood is peerless. Indeed, we often say about Northern Ireland, our food, the power of good. And I stand here ready with every single member of this House today, especially the Minister, to play our part in helping the fishing industry going forward. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The sad truth is that our fishing industry has not been able to attain its full potential for over 50 years. It's no coincidence that 50 years has essentially been the period of our membership of the EU, because the EU's common fisheries policy has crucified our fishing industry with punitive quotas, with needless bureaucracy, and constantly on the back of fishermen. I am told, and I have no reason to doubt it, that before we joined the EU, in Kilkeel harbour, when the fishing fleet was in, you could walk from one side of the harbour to the other across the decks of the boats. Today, when the fishing fleet is in, it's a few boats straggled up each side. A very clear manifestation of how much our fishing industry has been denuded by the common fisheries policy. And now that we have left the EU, we still have the problem of the protocol. Because historically, a lot of fishing boats out of Kilkeel or Portavogie or Ardglass, when they were fishing in the Irish Sea, would have landed their catch, say, at Whitehaven and carried on fishing. When they do that today, they now, transporting them back by lorry, have to pass through the Irish Sea border, further impeding the free passage and the free commerce and the free trade that catching fish within British waters should give rise to. And that is a continuing hurdle and burden. And we also have... Yes, I'll give one.
Would the member agree then that before Brexit things were better?
If the member had been listening, he'd have said before EU membership things were so much better. And if he'd take off his rose-tinted glasses, he would see that it was the common fisheries policy which crucified our fishing industry and left it in the poor state that it's in. That is indisputable when you compare how we were then with what we are now. And when you come to other matters that affect our fishing industry, we've had the voisinage agreement for some years, unimplemented for many years in respect of our rights to fish in Irish waters. We still have the prohibition, and I heard the Sinn Féin representative talking about our all-Ireland fishing. Sorry, we still have a prohibition on boats from Northern Ireland fishing within the 6 to 12 mile Irish seawater, Irish waters. Why? Because of that agreement and the failure to fully address those issues. And recently, we had DEFRA make an agreement to allow Irish vessels, Irish fishing vessels, into the Rockall waters to their advantage. But we didn't have a quid pro quo of arguing and attaining access for Northern Ireland fishing boats into the 6 to 12 mile waters of the Irish controlled waters. So again, another failure in respect of our fishing industry. So, Mr. Speaker, we are in a situation where if ever an industry needed to be liberated to find the growth, to find the potential, to expand in the way it could, then this is that industry. But instead, I fear that the latest threat to our industry is going to come under the banner of the green agenda. I've heard Mr. Blair talk about all the things that need to be done. What I don't hear any talk about is, what are the costings of doing that in the industry? Who's going to pay those bills? Is it going to be the hapless fisherman again who is put upon by further needless bureaucracy? Is it the fisherman, the fish owners, who are boat owners, who are going to be impeded in that way? Certainly.
I'm delighted to hear that the member has brought up about the pressures that would be added to our fishing fleet. I used the example of Iceland, where actually improving and making improvements to the environmental outputs of the vehicles has actually resulted in fishing fleet there being able to land heavier catches. So there's a benefit to actually being more environmental within the fishing industry.
And of course, Iceland had the great advantage of not for the last 50 years being in the EU and was able to grow its industry. And indeed, I served in the Fisheries Committee in the European Parliament for many years, and I do happen to know that the fishing industries in Norway, outside the EU, in the Faroe Islands, outside the EU, in Iceland, outside the EU, all flourished and grew because they were not subject to the crucifying restraints of the common fisheries policy. So now is the time to try and liberate our fishing industry and give it the growth and give it the momentum that it so long has been starved of, so that we can have the full benefit of what that industry can do.
I call the Minister for Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, Mr Andrew Muir. You'll have 15 minutes, Mr Muir.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I first start by thanking members for bringing these issues to the floor for discussion. As Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, it is my strong desire to work with members and the fishery sector in order to safeguard and advance a sustainable fishing industry in the years to come. There's been a number of points raised as part of this debate, and I will seek to pick them up in my contribution and ministerial response. I honestly believe that this will be best achieved by collective action, direct liaison and partnership with industry stakeholders and their dependencies. I am acutely aware of the risks faced by fishermen and fisherwomen every day at sea, navigating the vast expanse of the ocean with its unpredictable weather patterns and formidable challenges which serves both as their arena and also as their livelihood. The crew embark on their vessels each day not knowing what trials they may encounter, yet despite these challenges they persevere. I want to assure all members here today that I recognise the vital role the fishing industry plays in Northern Ireland's economy and also in terms of our cultural heritage and rural communities. In advance of today's motion, I made a deliberate effort to engage and was at Portavogie Harbour, as members have outlined last week, and also met up with the Northern Ireland Fishermen's Federation. I'm conscious of the invite that I've received last week from Diane Forsyth and from other members as well to visit Ardglass and Kilkeel harbours, and I'm very keen to do that, and we're seeing how we can facilitate that. I think it's important that I contribute here today, but also I engage with the communities when I get out of Parliament buildings. There's no doubt that our local fishing industry has, especially over the last 5 years, experienced very challenging times. The COVID pandemic impacted upon fishing opportunities and markets, and therefore profitability. More recently, increased input costs, especially the price of fuel, which rose significantly during 2022, has again impacted upon the profitability of our fleet. I'm pleased my department, through the COVID pandemic, was able to provide 6 schemes of financial assistance to assist the fishing, sea fishing, inland fishing and aquaculture sectors in remaining viable during those challenging times. In terms of fuel costs, the industry must be commended for continuing to operate, especially during 2022, when the cost of fuel soared to over £1.10 per litre, and for successfully negotiating and securing an increase in market price for their landings, which, if they were not covered, would have been very devastating for the industry. While the current cost of red diesel for the fleet ranges between 70p and 80p per litre, this does not include the rebate provided annually by His Majesty's Customs and Excise, called the Marine Voyageurs Relief, which returns just under 10p per litre to vessel owners. There are limitations to securing an immediate uplift of fishing opportunities for quota species, given that quotas and rights are rightly based upon the best scientific evidence, and both industry and government must ensure that non-quota species are harvested at a sustainable level, and we all have a duty to recognise that. However, we can support industry in taking measures that will help reinforce the long-term viability of our fisheries and ensure that they are economically and environmentally sustainable for the next generation. And can I say, both go hand in hand. My officials will continue to engage at a national and international level to ensure that Northern Ireland's fisheries interests are represented. They will continue to work with all stakeholders to bring forward policy that promotes positive change for the industry. It is very reassuring to learn that industry promotes itself as being guardians of the marine environment, and I saw that last week. This is not surprising, as healthy fish stocks are dependent upon healthy ecosystems, and restoring our seas to good environmental status will maximise longer-term opportunities and ultimately revenues and profits. Over the last few years, industry and my officials have worked very well together to promote sustainability and reduce the impacts of fishing on the marine environment. A large number of industry-led schemes have been supported by my department to underpin a sustainable industry. These include the appointment of a Northern Ireland gear technician, to, in partnership with fishermen and fisherwomen and science providers, identify and trial more selective fishing gears and practices. The appointment of an industry sustainability officer has also been fully funded in order to progress issues which may impact upon current and future sustainability of the fleet and its operating environment. I would encourage industry to continue on this path of co-management. Indeed, it is pleasing to note that the industry itself, for stock sustainability reasons, have encouraged the introduction of 2 increases in the minimum landing size for brown crab, which have been successfully introduced. I am committed to continuing the stakeholder engagement to ensure that the UK Joint Fisheries Statement policies are implemented effectively and deliver a thriving, sustainable fishing industry for Northern Ireland whilst improving the marine environment. The development of fisheries management plans provides an important opportunity for Northern Ireland fisheries management by enabling us to draw on the best available science and the expertise of our fishers and other stakeholders to ensure our fish stocks are healthy and sustainable into the long term. Officials from my department are working closely with stakeholders and other UK administrations to develop fishery management plans for our key fishing stocks. The fishery management plans will set out policies for maintaining stocks at sustainable levels or restoring them to these levels if needed. I acknowledge the importance of fishing, recreational sea fishing and aquaculture in Northern Ireland to many of our coastal communities. This is highlighted in the Joint Fisheries Statement, which also emphasises the importance of working with the catching and processing sectors, along with their supply chains, on succession planning, training, access to domestic labour and fair remuneration to encourage new entrants. My department is committed to promoting the consumption of locally sourced seafood as a healthy, high-quality protein source and to supporting prosperous and resilient UK and international markets. In terms of ongoing practical and financial support, I will shortly be considering a draft 5-year strategic plan for support of marine and fisheries sectors, which, as well as offering support consistent with those themes available through previous EU funding programmes, should also provide incentives to enable the industry to become more economically and environmentally resilient. Should the funding be secured to deliver the proposed scheme, there would be significantly more support available for industry annually over the next 5 years than what was available under the recent European Maritime and Fisheries Fund. This all depends upon the budgets my department is awarded. The emerging funding strategy was developed through initial engagement with and listening to industry on what the key issues were going to be over the next 5 years. I will seek to provide support on issues such as crewing, reducing input costs and the age of Northern Ireland's fishing fleet. The strategy will also consider the provision of financial support for industry-led initiatives that aim to encourage a career in fishing for new entrants, training and gaining of relevant qualifications. In addition, the strategy should include funding to reflect the age of many of the vessels within our fleet and the need to modernise or replace vessels with more modern equipment and technologies, including propulsion systems that will either reduce diesel fuel consumption or replace diesel as the primary means of power. Yes, I'm happy to.
All fine words, Minister. In terms of renewing the fleet, in times past we had a decommissioning scheme. Is that part of your thinking?
I thank the member for his contribution, and I did listen to his earlier speech. I think the member was quoted with the costs of dealing with the challenges associated with climate change and taking those opportunities. Can I ask the member as well to also recognise there's a cost of not doing anything in relation to this? And I think that over the time ahead, we need to look at climate change as an opportunity for us to re-energise our economy and support industries going forward. And other members have outlined that. So I think we need to focus our minds very differently around this area. Any new propulsion systems... I'm going to continue, member. I'm going to continue. Any new propulsion systems needs to be practical and safe for our vessels and fishers and will require extensive research to identify what will work best for our fleet. I am delighted that industry and government in Northern Ireland has already started work on this issue over the last 2 years, aiming to develop options to deliver a net zero fishing vessel for the local fleet. A working group meets regularly to progress this objective and has drawn on expertise at Queen's University, local engineers and boat builders, and has established links with Norwegian stakeholders who are considered world leaders in this field. Naturally, safety remains one of our key objectives, I would argue the top objective, for fishers and fishing vessels and what is generally recognised as the most dangerous occupations in the world. We will continue to support industry improving safety on board fishing vessels through education and training, gaining skills and professional qualifications, newer or more modern vessels and improved operational and living conditions on board vessels. Members have raised the subject of green growth. I am pleased to advise that proposed funding strategy will focus extensively on providing support for projects that are aligned to the principles of green growth. This includes the objective of the fisheries sector contributing towards the achievement of net zero commitments, promoting the circular economy through initiatives such as addressing end-of-life fishing vessels and fishing gears, disposal of environmental waste at and around ports, and the provision of clean power around the 3 primary fishing ports of Ardglass, Kilkeel and Portavogie. The draft strategy will also recognise the need for innovative initiatives on energy efficiency, mitigation of climate change and delivering a blue carbon action plan, which will require continuing collaboration between the industry, NGOs, science providers and governments. Members are asked to note that the funding strategy will cover more than sea fisheries stakeholders. It will provide support for developmental green growth focused initiatives and investments by inland fishers, aquaculture and processing sectors, port authorities and service providers that directly support the operation of the fishery sectors across Northern Ireland. In parallel to these initiatives I will be considering in the funding strategy, I will continue to progress the recommendations from the Fishing and Seafood Development Programme to prepare an outline business case for the infrastructure blueprints at Kilkeel and Ardglass harbours. Members may be aware that the investment proposed as part of the Harbour Development Programme will cost current estimates around £120 million to deliver, and that was before recent inflationary rises. Due to the scale of the investment and these challenging times for the public purse, there will need to be a robust and comprehensive business case to allow a final decision to be taken on the viability of such investment. To progress this matter, I am pleased that my department has secured Department of Finance approval to spend £1.47 million on the environmental and technical studies that are needed to inform the outline business case for the harbour development works both at Kilkeel and Ardglass. CPD will be advertising the invitation to tender for integrated consultant teams to progress these studies in the coming weeks. In addition to this, my department has supported the Northern Ireland Fishery Harbour Authority in making a successful application to the UK Seafood Fund to deliver a £3.6 million upgrade of current slipway facilities at Portavogie Harbour. Hope members can gain reassurance that plans are in place to continue and indeed extend the support available to the industry in a manner that, as far as possible, takes on board the concerns expressed when the new funding strategy started to be developed. The proposals also cater for the need to increase focus on green growth, net zero and environmental protection and restoration. I have been privileged already to meet with many people in my time. This is week 4 and I am looking forward to engaging more over the term ahead. I want to reassure members that I am supportive of all sectors of our fishing industry and appreciate the work undertaken by the industry, often in partnership and with full financial or other support from my officials to date. I am content to record my support for the fishing industry through continued and indeed extended financial support should the funding be secured. In response to some of the issues raised, and the most key issue for me is in terms of labour access and migration. A letter has went to the Home Secretary and it's very clear and very direct in terms of my concerns and the concerns from the sector and also from members in terms of what they are proposing. I have a concern that this is driven more by ideological motivations and a view to an election rather than the concerns for Northern Ireland or the sectors that are affected as a result of this. And I would engage or again urge the UK Government to reflect upon that and to abandon what, to me, are devastating proposals. In terms of the other issues, such as the 12-mile zone around the Isle of Man and also concerns around fisheries in terms of the Republic of Ireland, I met with officials yesterday and looking to convene a meeting of the British Irish Council so we can discuss those in that forum. In terms of Lough Neagh and the issues that Patsy McGlone raised, I have engaged with the people around Lough Neagh and have further engagements, particularly around fisheries, planned over the time ahead. In terms of the opening remarks by Michelle McAveen, in terms of when the timetable of 2026 is viable for the commencement of the Harbour Development Programme, as members be aware, the Assembly and Executive did not sit for 2 years, and in the absence of ministers and also in terms of budgetary challenges, that has now been delayed for a commencement of 2027. I will not shy away from my ministerial responsibilities to assist industry in tackling key issues that may prevent a more economically and environmentally resilient industry to develop over time and be one which we can be proud of. I recognise this will take significant time, investment, commitment and working in partnership to make the adjustments that are needed, but I wish to see this delivered. Thank you.
I call Patsy McGlone to wind on the amendment.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. And I thank all the speakers who have contributed well to the amendment and indeed for their support for the motion and the amendment, I should say. Initially, Michelle McElveen had raised the point, if the Minister had in actual fact raised the issues of the budget with the Minister of Finance and the investment in those, and I think the Minister did allude to that in his response. She referred to the labour shortages, the price increases and the problems with the visa system, which indeed my colleague in his amendment sought to highlight that in particular. That appears to be, it's not an area that I know very well, but I'm reliant on good people such as yourselves, the representatives from the area, to highlight those issues as they see them and as they are actually panning out. Now, the consequences of the likes of Brexit, the consequences of the fuel prices, the consequences of the immigration policies of the UK government, and those were referred to as extreme, which in fact they are, and people not being able to bring their families with them. All those contribute to this and indeed to other sectors. It's not just fishing sectors. You have home care workers, you have nursing homes, you have the nursing sector, you have the health service, all of those things where these very, very, vicious indeed migration policies are having an impact on how we go about our care and our economy. So I thank members for raising those issues. My colleague Colin McGrath referred to the effects of Brexit on the fishing industry, how it went wrong, the capacity in the fishing sector and the uncertainty that has been brought about by the various factors that have been raised multiple times by people around the chamber. He also referred to the migration laws too that I've already spoken on. During today's debate, we've also heard the issues Cathy Mason referred to: marine conservation, the flora, fauna, and the need for sustainability of that, and also the requirement for regulation too, and the importance of that, and the need for the prevention, of course, of overfishing. John Blair, the importance of the industry and the economy, indeed also the climate change targets which are upon us now, and their importance to the fishing industry, but indeed to all of us. He also referred to the need for the green environment, stock management, the importance of north, south and east, west bodies to ensure coordinated approach on the entire fishing industry and that economy. Tom Elliott made good points about Lough Neagh. He also made some more local points about Ballyshannon ESB as well during an intervention. He referred to the quotas, the European Union, and indeed he made reference to Brexit, the NI Protocol and the Windsor Framework, and the need for support for fishing. Sinead Ennis spoke about local fishermen, about the number of occasions that she and her party colleagues had met with the local industry, referred to, again, the workforce issues, the importance to resolve the labour difficulties, the need for training and encouraging young people to take up the trade, which I think maybe it's not just confined to that one industry. I think that's reflective in many cases right across our rural workforces too. William Irwin referred to the tremendous respect he had for people that go out to fish in dangerous seas and the work that they do. He also referred indeed to people not being possibly as aware as they should be of where their fish suppers come from. And maybe, William, I could commend the Brewery Lane tea in Cookstown the next time you're travelling through. A great fish supper, and it comes from Ardglass. The fish every week they're delivered from Ardglass. Top fish supper. So thank you for drawing attention to that particular aspect of it. Kelly Armstrong, the message of fishing in Portavogie, the problems with the Brexit, the access to funding, and referring to the Minister for help in that regard. The Minister did outline that hopefully soon there will be proposals in that regard. Diane Forsyth gave a very local perspective of growing up in Kilkeel, that local knowledge of how the local community works, how you need there was the markets, the factories and subsidiary businesses there, and the call for capital funding for the ports as reflected in the motion. Patrick Brown referred to the hard-working people, the UK immigration, the problems with the UK exit from Europe, and indeed decarbonisation
The member brings
fishing
remarks
fleet.
to close.
So that's just some of the synopsis. Sorry, I haven't got around to everyone else. If I had more time, I would do that. So thank members for their input to the debate and indeed for the support for our amendment on it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call Mr. Tom Buchanan to wind on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank all who took part in today's debate on much needed capital investment in the fishing industry in Northern Ireland. The motion that was before the House obviously set out the important part the fishing industry plays in the economy, while highlighting the impact the rising costs are having on the industry, the fishermen and their respective families, and the support required from a practical, financial and capital aspect to enable the industry to continue to develop by being in a position where they can take advantage of new fishing opportunities, including through investment in the modernisation of their vehicles. This was a vision that was set out in the Fishing and Seafood Development Programme report of May 2021, first commissioned in 2019. And page 30 of that report sets out very clearly the vision, the objectives, the recommendations. Maybe we'll just remind the House today of some of those issues. The vision that Northern Ireland fishing and seafood industry is fit for the 21st century, that is prosperous and sustainable, is able to take advantage of new fishing opportunities. It will be supported and improved fishing infrastructure that will enable growth in the blue economy and contribute to thriving coastal communities. That vision is still in the document that was drawn. It hasn't been realised yet. The objectives that the fishing operations are sustainable in economic, environmental and social terms, sufficiently profitable to invest in fleet that can operate efficiently, attract crew and reduce in carbon emissions. That Northern Ireland grasps future opportunities in the existing and emerging sectors of the blue economy, and that Northern Ireland fishing harbours are developed to support the needs of the fishing industry. Again, those objectives are within a document but haven't been delivered on. The recommendations was to enhance the capacity of Ardglass to provide security for fishing and processing businesses, to develop Kilkeel as a potential Irish sea hub for the fishing and maritime economy by increasing port capacity and shoreside facilities, and investing in Portavogie Harbour estate to allow it to take advantage of a future blue economy opportunities. The proposed investment being 73 million for Kilkeel, 20 million for Ardglass and 5 million for Portavogie. However, to date this vision, the objectives, the recommendations and the proposed financial spend still form part of a paper exercise which has not been delivered on for the hard-pressed fishing industry in Northern Ireland today. While the previous Dear Minister and my colleagues successfully sought permission for an outline business case to move forward the important work of carrying out the technical and environmental studies to unlock this investment and get construction underway, it is regrettable that due to budgetary and other pressures, this preparatory work was delayed and was unable to be taken forward. Let's hope the restoration of this executive is not another false dawn for the industry that so much depends on investment as they seek to move forward. The representatives of the fishing industry must get a clear understanding from the Minister on the current state of these plans and whether integrated consultant teams have been or will now be able to get to work to complete these relevant technical studies, and whether proper investment will be in place to allow the development works to commence. It must be the Department and Minister's long-term ambition to release the major capital investment that is required for the development of our harbours with a multi-year budget cycle to enable our fishing and seafood industry, like all other businesses in different sectors, to have certainty and to be able to plan for the future as they go forward. Some comments from the members that did take part in the debate, and I know the winder of the amendment did cover a number of these, but from my own colleagues, there was the issue of the fishing industry being a thriving sector. There was a concern of the labour shortages and the need for the Minister and the Department to fight for the industry. I think that's the important issue. The Minister must take on this battle and fight for the industry. There was the resilience of the sector, the frustration of the industry due to the lack of progress, and the industry, as an industry that does not want to stand still, but wants to and needs to be moving forward. And that the harbour formed the heart of the towns, and the uncertainty at present is taking its toll on the industry.
Just on the comments there about the Minister fighting for this, I could completely echo that, and just politely to the Minister, I don't think firing a letter off to the Home Secretary is going to cut it. That will be dealt with in a correspondence department within the Home Office and may not even be seen by the Home Secretary, and may very well just be responded to from a junior minister that will sign a letter. I hope that the Minister will undertake the passion that there is from all the parties here for this, that maybe a phone call, trying to get a meeting with the Home Secretary, trying to push this, because it is a major issue, and I think a letter will just be batted away, like most of us have already written letters, and the response isn't up to much.
Member for his intervention, indeed he's correct in what he's saying. Sinn Féin representatives raised the issue of the fishing being much more than a job, but it's actually a way of life for the communities in those areas. The need for redevelopment of our harbours, but requires more crew to work within the sector, and the need for the provision of educational courses within our college to help develop the industry. Tom Elliott of the UUP obviously spoke about the turnover of 135 million within the industry and the jobs of 1,550 jobs. And he mentioned how it was any industry of this size, it was unable for them to move forward without investment from within government circles. The uncertainty in the past around quotas and the waters where they were able to fish in, and it now requires a sustainable position going forward. The Alliance Party spoke of the importance of the fishing industry, the importance of improvements to the fishing fleet while meeting environmental targets, the importance of showcasing the best we have in Northern Ireland, and of course that this is not only a single department issue, but it's a cross-departmental working group issue that is required here. And the need to safeguard the marine environment and the culture and heritage of the fishing industry needs to be protected for the future generations. The SDLP made reference to the vast sector the fishing industry actually is within Northern Ireland, and the benefit that it is to the economy, and the need for certainty and speed of delivering on programmes going forward to help the sector move forward. Jim Allister spoke of the EU bureaucracy that didn't allow the fishing industry to obtain their full potential for over 50 years because of the common agriculture policy, the common fisheries policy. The Minister spoke of the vital role the fishing industry plays in the economy. The fishing industry faces very difficult times and faced difficult times over the past year due to increases in fuel and other costs. And the long-term viability and sustainability of the fishing industry goes hand in hand. And he did give a commitment to continuing with stakeholder engagement to ensure the thriving of the industry. And he did mention that he would shortly be considering a 5-year plan for the industry. So we do welcome the Minister's commitment to the fishing industry. Thank all who took part in the debate, and we commend it to the House today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That concludes the debate. The question is that the amendment stand in the name of Colin McGrath and Patsy McGlone be made. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, if any, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is the motion as amended be agreed. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, if any, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. If members would take their ease, we move to the next item of business.